All right, so one of the other questions I received was, what are the points of comfort which define your boots? A lot of this plays into two things: how the last is designed and how we decided to build the boots around the last. There are really, there are really only a couple of main points that I want to hit here. I knew when developing the last that there needed to be enough room in the points that customers were able to just sort of like move your foot, right? So when we're looking at areas of the last, like the toe box, for example, I knew that the toe box is going to be an area where people want to be able to have breathing room for their toes and the ball of their foot, and even going into the vamp. So I wanted to create, a boot with a little bit extra room in that area, but I also wanted to kind of preserve that sleeker silhouette that I designed into the last in the first place. So that was definitely a challenge again from my previous question. It took about 7 or 8 different last samples to actually achieve that. It definitely took a while, but I knew that that was one of the areas that I wanted to focus on. Another area was the heel. I I know that a lot of I know that a lot of boots and shoes can produce heel slippage for people, especially when they're brand new. Um, I wanted to make something that wasn't necessarily going to. I wanted to design the last and how we built the boot in such a way where your heel is locked into place, but it also has a little bit of breathing room because at least from the feedback I've received from my customers, from when I've started up until now, is that, and I've noticed this with different samples of boots that we've tested, both from my brand and from other brands, is that if your heel doesn't have a little bit of wiggle room or a little bit of breathing space, the break-in process is just painful. Many blisters can happen if if there's not a lot of breathing room. For your heel, so I thought to myself, let's design a heel that's gonna not only help keep your physical heel in place into inside the boot, but also give it that little bit of flexibility and breathing room that it'll need during the break-in process. So when I was looking at that, I realized that a lot of it also had to do with the insole. So whenever you're buying a more expensive like Goodyear welted boot, depending on the materials that are used, like I tend to use for my insole, we've used Texon at one point, but we ended up using that as a backer to the insole to help with the break-in process. But I've used veg tan leather, I've used chrome tan leather, and we've used some also used some like different types of like skirting leather and bridle and stuff like that. Um, Keeping that in mind, these are generally thicker leathers, but in addition to that, you also have different layers of the boot that need to be broken in two on the footbed. So I use all natural cork filler underneath the insole, and it's one thing about the cork filler that we use. It's actually 100% genuine cork. So something that is a little bit more expensive for us to use, but I've seen instances where other companies and in the factories that I've been to, where they use like this cork mixture, where it's like a combination of cork and like different pieces of scrap rubber or something like that. Or even in some cases, cork and foam. So I just felt like, if we're gonna do this, like, I don't know, I wanted to kind of do this like the best way possible. And, I understand there are many different ways to provide comfort within a boot or a shoe, but I guess in this sense, I just kind of wanted to stick more traditional. So I wanted to use 100% genuine cork filler. Um, so you have like the insole, you can have the backer, you can have the cork, you can have the midsole. So all of these layers need to be properly broken in first, so they can create kind of like a stiff feeling for the overall footbed. So really, until these layers have been broken in, you're going to get a little bit of heel slippage. But once those layers have been broken in after the first few wears or so, your foot's going to conform quite nicely to the footbed, but also the heel of the boot's also going to conform and mold around your physical heel on your foot. So it should allow you that breathing room that your heel needs, but you shouldn't be getting things like blisters and, with the footbed being broken in and all those layers being broken in, it should conform to your foot quite nicely. And before you know it, you'll have a perfectly broken in pair of boots.